Welcome to another podcast of the Riffle series.
The Riffle, a podcast series brought to you by 10 Leaves.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, when we talk about crypto regulation, we often focus on places like the US or maybe the EU.
Right, the usual suspects.
Exactly. But today we are heading to the Middle East, specifically the Dubai International Financial Center, the DIFC, for what I'd call an institutional sanity check. We're conducting a deep dive into the criteria that the Dubai Financial Services Authority, the DFSA, uses to assess the suitability of a crypto token.
And that's suitability for use by regulated firms operating under its umbrella, right?
That's the one.
Yeah, and it's so important because these aren't just, dry regulatory mandates.
No, not at all.
For you, our listener, whether you're a professional trying to vet a new asset or just someone curious about what makes a serious crypto project, these DFSA guidelines are, well, they're like a sophisticated blueprint.
A blueprint. I like that.
It really is. It clearly reveals the anatomy of a viable, stable, and compliant project versus one that the regulator just sees as fatally high risk.
So our mission today is to unpack the 5 core pillars of that assessment.
Exactly. The pillars that separate the foundational protocols from the fragile ventures.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we even get to the pillars, we need to understand the fundamental obligation here. If I am a person, and that's the DFSA's term for a regulated firm, what is my actual duty regarding a crypto token I want to use or offer?
Okay, so your duty is, it's really clear and it's non-transferable.
Non-transferable.
You must undertake a formal assessment and then conclude on reasonable grounds that the crypto token is suitable for your specific intended activity.
So it's all based on GEN Rule 3A.2.1.
That's the one. And the biggest takeaway here, I think, is that suitability is not some universal stamp of approval.
Right.
It is highly, highly dependent on context.
Context is everything, especially in risk management. So how dramatically does suitability shift based on, say, who I am and what I plan to do?
Oh, dramatically. The assessment requires you, the regulated person, to consider your proposed activity, your customer base, and, the complexity of your whole operation.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's take an asset that has a relatively low market capitalization. Normally, that's a risk indicator, right?
Yeah, a definite red flag for liquidity.
But a large, well-established global fund manager, one who's dealing only with professional clients.
So very sophisticated investors.
Exactly. They might reasonably conclude that because of their client sophistication and maybe the structure of their fund, that low-cap token is still acceptable.
But if that same token were assessed by, let's say, a wealth management firm that's targeting mass retail investors, the result would be completely different.
Precisely. That smaller firm, if they're dealing in investments as agent for retail clients, they would almost certainly reach the opposite conclusion about that exact same token.
Why is that?
The risk of sudden illiquidity or price manipulation is just too high for the general public. So the token is unsuitable for that specific purpose and that client base.
Okay, so let's say I do my due diligence and I identify a red flag. The DFSA calls this a negative indicator from their annex.
Right.
Does that mean the token is instantly off limits?
Not instantly, no, but it imposes a really significant hurdle. If you identify one of these negative indicators, a clear mark of inherent risk, the onus is entirely on you.
On me, the firm.
On you, the firm, to document objective evidence. You have to clearly explain why those risks are still acceptable, how you've assessed them, and exactly how you plan to manage them.
So you can't just tick a box.
No, you have to overcome the negative with robust, documented reasoning.
That prevents firms from just cherry-picking assessments. Speaking of which, can I just rely on another firm's assessment if they've already greenlit the token?
Generally, no. A suitability assessment is it's custom-made. A token that's suitable for firm X doing activity A is not automatically suitable for that same firm doing activity B.
Or for a totally different firm.
Or for firm Y doing activity A.
Yeah.
It is not transferable.
But there's an exception for funds, right?
There is, yes. The only major exception is related to fund distribution. If you're distributing units of a fund that already invests in a suitable crypto token, you can take the fund manager's existing assessment into account.
Because the risk is kind of baked into the fund structure already.
Exactly. The risk is essentially carried over.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's dive into those 5 pillars, starting with Pillar A, token characteristics, purpose, and governance. This feels like a deep dive into the token's DNA, its utility, and I guess who controls it.
It is. This section is looking for fundamental utility and organizational strength. A suitable crypto token has to demonstrate a clear use case.
So not just speculation.
Right. It has to solve a fundamental, verifiable problem or create economic value beyond just, hype.
And the DFSA gives us a really excellent, crystal clear example of what they mean by real value.
They do. On the positive side, they cite a crypto token that's designed as a low-fee medium for a decentralized identity protocol.
Okay, so it solves a real-world problem around digital trust.
A complex one, yeah. And its measurable adoption by third-party platforms directly proves its utility.
And what's the regulatory counterpoint? The kind of token they actively want to filter out?
The meme coin. The DFSA explicitly categorizes these as speculative. They lack real-world application, and they're often created just to follow a trend or employ some humor.
And they flag a specific danger there?
A massive one. They immediately identify the inherent danger. If founders or affiliates hold a significant portion of the supply, they actually cite 15% as a critical threshold.
15%? Wow.
Their disposal of those tokens could cause an immediate catastrophic negative price impact. That's a huge liquidity risk baked right into the governance.
That connects the utility problem directly to market stability, which is very smart. So beyond the use case, Pillar A also demands extreme transparency, focusing on traceability and compliance. They specifically mention the FATF travel rule.
Right. This is the highest bar for transparency. The token has to be effectively traceable, which lets you monitor on-chain activity for ongoing AML compliance.
And what's the green light look like?
A green light is a token on a public, permissionless blockchain with full transaction visibility. That allows for effective real-time AML screening.
But the negative indicator here is specific, right? It targets privacy technologies. They call out things like ring signatures and stealth addresses.
They do.
For our listener who might be prepping for a meeting and needs that aha moment, what exactly are those and why are they such a nightmare for the DFSA?
That's a crucial distinction. These technologies are often used by so-called privacy coins.
Right.
Ring signatures. They essentially, they obfuscate who started the transaction by mixing a real signer with a group of dummy signers. It hides the true source.
Okay, and stealth addresses.
Stealth addresses create a temporary one-time address for every single transaction. So it makes it impossible to link activity to a permanent user identity.
So it's not just about hiding the user, it's about obscuring the entire flow of money.
Exactly. And the DFSA states that this makes monitoring virtually impossible on a public ledger, even with specialized tools.
So for a regulated entity that has to comply with global standards, that's just a non-starter.
An immediate showstopper for suitability.
And just to wrap up Pillar A, they also want clear governance, like a consensus mechanism, and importantly, publicly identifiable founders and core developers.
Right. Transparency isn't just about code, it's about accountability. And there's one last vital point. Concentration risk.
What's the good sign there?
A strong positive sign is low concentration. For instance, if the top 10 wallets collectively hold only, say, 5% of the supply.
That seriously limits the risk of price manipulation.
Drastically. You don't have a small group of insiders who can dump on the market.
Okay, so once we've analyzed the token's internal DNA, its purpose and governance, Pillars B and C shift the focus.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the focus shifts entirely to its external footprint, its regulatory passport, and its market health.
Let's start with Pillar B, regulatory status. This feels like the DFSA is checking to see if the project has, well, survived regulatory scrutiny somewhere else.
That's spot on. Has the token been formally classified or approved by other robust financial services regulators?
And what's the gold standard here?
The gold standard is a token approved for retail investors under a full licensing regime, like the EU's markets in crypto assets regulation. MiCA.
Ah, MiCA. So if MiCA has vetted it for retail, the DFSA sees that as a huge green light.
A huge green light. It's a powerful starting point. It signals institutional acceptance. A simple listing on an overseas exchange is meaningless.
It has to be formal regulatory approval.
It has to be. And beyond that, the DFSA demands verification that the issuer is licensed and subject to ongoing supervision covering AML KYC and reporting, and that you can verify this through public registers.
And obviously, a clean compliance history is essential.
Absolutely. A clean record, no enforcement actions, no fines, no bans in any major jurisdiction. That's fundamental. Any past regulatory issue is a severe negative indicator under Pillar B.
Okay, moving to Pillar C, market size, liquidity, and trading. This is where we gauge the practical investment and trading risk.
Right. A suitable token has to have substantial market capitalization relative to its trading volume. That ratio indicates broad adoption and, crucially, robust liquidity.
And stability is key too.
Price and circulating supply must also demonstrate inherent stability. That reduces its susceptibility to, market manipulation.
The DFSA's reliance on high market cap and pre-existing regulatory approval, it seems to inherently disadvantage smaller, innovative tokens.
Mhm.
Is the DFSA inadvertently creating a bias toward only the largest legacy projects?
That tension is undeniable. But you have to remember, the DFSA is building a jurisdiction for institutional capital in the DIFC.
So their priority is systemic risk mitigation, not fostering frontier innovation.
Exactly. They are saying explicitly that liquidity risk is unacceptable. The negative indicator here warns against any situation where a few holders could significantly influence the market.
For a project to be suitable for institutional use, it has to withstand large-scale trading without collapsing.
Precisely.
And how do they ensure accurate, non-manipulated pricing?
The token must be actively traded on multiple reputable exchanges. That allows for reliable price discovery.
Right.
And all the supply metrics, total, circulating, and maximum, had to be clearly disclosed and verifiable on-chain. Transparency and stability are the watchwords here.
Okay, so this next section, Pillar D, technology used, it drills down on the technical backbone. Basically, what happens when things go wrong?
Yeah, this is all about operational resilience. The DFSA wants to ensure that the underlying blockchain isn't fragile or subject to single points of failure.
And they have specific markers for what resilience looks like.
Very clear institutional markers. The blockchain must be well-established, operational for over 5 years, have high uptime, and be backed by thousands of geographically distributed nodes.
Why are those specific metrics, 5 years and distributed nodes, so crucial for institutional stability?
Well, longevity proves the network has survived multiple market cycles and stress tests. Right?
Makes sense.
And distributed nodes, meaning the network is run by thousands of independent parties in different places. That's the countermeasure against keyman risk or government intervention or even just a localized power failure.
So they don't want the network control concentrated in one basement in Zurich.
Or one server farm in Nevada, exactly. They want genuine, resilient decentralization.
But every technology has vulnerabilities. So the criteria also assess the ability to adapt to things like hacks or major cyber attacks.
Incident response is a core necessity. A suitable protocol must have established, tested incident response procedures.
And a good track record.
A historical track record of quick patching and transparent communication during security events. And demonstrated upgradability features that have been used to mitigate past events.
And what's the telltale sign of systemic fragility here? The thing that keeps regulators up at night?
The negative indicator describes a protocol that lacked any formal mechanism for responding to an incident.
So during a hack?
During a cyber attack, it was unable to halt the exploitative transactions, there was no coordination among developers or node operators, and users got no official guidance.
That's a total failure of the infrastructure and the governance.
It's a clear sign that it failed a black swan event, making it fundamentally unsuitable.
And finally, that brings us to Pillar E, compliance with DFSA laws. This feels like the ultimate internal gatekeeper, bringing us full circle.
This is the final and really the most encompassing check. Does the use of this crypto token prevent the regulated person from complying with any applicable DFSA laws and rules?
And since we started with AML and counter-terrorist financing as a critical risk factor, it seems fitting that the final measure circles right back to that.
Indeed. The gold standard here is a crypto token that would not inhibit a person's compliance with any DFSA regulation.
So specifically?
Specifically, transactions must be transparent, on-chain activity has to be monitorable, and the protocol must support KYC and transaction screening where it's required.
And if the tech itself makes that impossible?
If the technology itself, like the use of those ring signatures we talked about, makes full DFSA compliance impossible, then suitability just vanishes instantly.
Okay, so what does this all mean when we put the 5 pillars together?
I think these guidelines teach us that true suitability in the crypto world means a project has to pass a really demanding dual test.
A dual test?
First, viability. That's demonstrated by a real use case. Strong governance, market liquidity, and, robust, resilient technology.
And the second part?
And second, compliance, which means transparency, traceability, and verifiable regulatory accountability across jurisdictions.
So the DFSA has essentially published a master filter for the learner, a way to quickly separate high-utility, robust protocols from purely speculative, fragile ventures.
That's a great way to put it. It's the difference between a decentralized identity protocol and a project whose only merit is social media virality.
It creates a defined safe zone for institutional capital in the DIFC.
It does. But this raises a really important question for the future, I think.
What's that?
Well, given that one of the strongest negative indicators is the inability to trace transactions using privacy-enhancing tech,
Right.
how will jurisdictions like the DIFC balance the regulatory demand for absolute transactional transparency with that fundamental crypto ideal of user privacy moving forward, especially as that technology matures?
A fascinating tension that every single regulator is eventually going to have to confront. Thank you for guiding us through the DFSA's rigorous framework today.
Always a pleasure.